Welcome back to the Hex Drinkers House of Commons, your one-stop shop for all things competitive and at the common rarity, at least for the next 30 or so minutes. Chev, I take it you've heard the news, the sad news that the Hex Drinkers are going on hiatus.
Yeah, here on the West Coast, the news took a little longer to get here. But when I opened up the paper in the morning and saw that the best EDH and cPDH content producers on the face of the earth were taking a break, it hit me right in the feels.
Yeah, it hurts for sure. But we at the House of Commons feel it's only right that we put out one more solid episode just to do the community right. And ourselves right, of course. We can't just vanish without a trace like the Avatar. That would just be disrespectful.
Listen, we said our goodbyes on episode 89 of the regular cast. That was heartfelt. That was really emotional. But House of Commons has always been our professional podcast. So said goodbye last time with a beer. I'm saying goodbye this time with an old fashioned.
Yeah, I'm saying goodbye both times with a glass of water because it's a weeknight. I don't know what do you want me to say.
That's never stopped you before.
Yeah, you're right. But new year, new me. I'm trying to cut back a little bit. At least during the week. On the weekends, fuck it.
Yeah. Anyway, expect our arena skin to drop soon. We'll get Hexy on there or something.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, anyway, speaking of things that we normally talk about on the House of Commons, it's been a minute since we've done a format update, a database update. And I guess that's to our benefit because there are some big changes happening. We wouldn't have wanted to jump the gun on. Chev, what's going on in database land?
Yeah, so like the Hex Drinkers, the previous iteration of the database is going the way of the dodo. Previously hosted on budgetbrews.club, the highest, the top tier PDH decks that we generally would refer to as cPDH, had a massive list of decks that were submitted by brewers after playing in the Tryhards meta or the Washington meta or New York or Boston. And based on a certain set of criteria, we would approve them and put them into this big list. Those criteria were a little bit more quantity over quality, I think. And Clay and others from the original database committee have taken a bold step to change the way that we evaluate cPDH decks. And will now focus on win rates of individual commanders, individual decks, as opposed to does the deck look like it would be competitive, which was kind of the previous metric. So now, over on cPDH.guide, the home to all things competitive and at the proper rarity, you can find the compendium, which is this new approach for decks that have a win record of 25% or better. 25% would be, you win 1 out of every 4 games, which would be pretty consistent in a 4-player pod. So if you're above that, that means your deck is probably competitive in some way. So we've got a few standouts already, and then the old list of decks, if you'd like those as a jumping off point for your own brews, are still available at cpdhguide.library. Currently, there's not a link available on the top board, but I'm sure it's coming soon. So yeah, big change.
Yeah.
We're going for metrics and data-driven decisions as opposed to letting any person and their own ego decide what goes on this list. And we think that's a very important step for a competitive format.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously the last admissions committee, or however you want to call it, was made up of a bunch of people who knew a lot about the format and they knew what was going on.
And
but
then
yeah,
me.
It definitely felt like, and Chev as well. He was just there kind of as to fill their minority quotas. Yeah, it definitely felt like if you put in the effort and just put in the critical amount of time just to check all the boxes, you would probably get there. But now we're going the way of big data. I think another thing that should be said is that you need a win rate of 25% or better, but you also have to have at least 15 games played, 15 games on record.
You can't just get in there with a win rate of 100%, 1 game played.
Yeah, I guess theoretically this is I don't know how many statisticians we have listening to the pod, but I guess this is a kind of a crude approximation of the law of large numbers. So yeah, definitely encourages people to, one, obviously get these things out into the world and test them, which then leads to obviously even more tinkering and more creation of what is optimal, but also just having them out in the world and having other people see them is a great way to get more people to want to try your deck. And theoretically, ideally, people are able to kind of crisscross in between metas
yes.
and see how it plays against different players and all sorts of different decks.
Yeah, and it really opens up, how decks get submitted as well, right? The tryhards have been great in collecting all this data over all their games played, but with this switch to really seeing cPDH Guide as the home of competitive Pauper, it's opened itself up to other communities as well. I was talking to Clay recently, and he said there's 3 or 4 growing in-person metas at this point, and the hope is that they would contribute in the same way. Something that we're kind of seeing towards the end of the current iteration of the database is we have a few all-star brewers just putting in deck after deck after deck, and that's amazing. We're more than happy to see all the different expressions of competitive Pauper that can kind of fit in there. But there was a question at times of are all of these decks that you're brewing and now responsible for getting the same amount of love? Are they all on the same level of competitive viability, or are they just slightly different tweaks on an underlying formula with another commander? So this way, we'll still see the same brewers, I'm sure, because they're kind of the best of the best at this point. But it limits really what can be given that top honor, and I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Speaking of all those metagame, metagame considerations, Clay is further taking big data. He has a whole section on the website that's just like all sorts of stats in terms of archetype win percentage, the amount of turns that you're playing in your average game, and then a huge, large list of big old breakdowns of win rate percentages and stuff for all of the decks, not just the ones that are featured on that compendium. So just obviously, once again, as the format grows, as more people continue to brew, and as these decks get more games played, we're just going to have a true wealth of data involving what's going on, relative to a lot of these other big data booms that we've been seeing in 60 card and more competitive versions of. I'm
also seeing a certain benthic druid out there, Julian, in the top 10 decks. You notice Tatiova is pulling numbers like expected.
Listen, what do you want me to say? That's my girl. She's out here doing what she does.
Oh.
She was one of the OGs. And she's not going to be losing her spot anytime soon, I tell you.
No. When they have to reprint her and they make a mythic, that they've made a busted uncommon.
Yeah, that's for sure. Gretchen Titchwellow is on the list now, though, so it'll be interesting to see when that...
Who did we promise an all-Simic pod to? I feel like we mentioned that somewhere.
I believe it was Puzzlebox.
Oh, that would make sense.
That would make sense. Gretchen's almost there. So Gretchen has 20 games with a 20% win rate, which is not bad. I think jamming out a few more games, we could probably get that up to 25% pretty cleanly.
I wonder if the tournament games are any part of that. The original thing that like Gretchen was on the map, but Puzzlebox really solidified her place with that win in the cEDH budget tournament.
Trevor, are there any new lists in here that we should be discussing that have gotten in since we last talked on about this, I think, in early December or late.
I don't think so. One of the unfortunate things of there's always going to be a transition period, and there were currently some decks in flight, some that I was really excited about when we made this shift for what is considered the database versus what might be considered the library of decks. So I'm not sure we fully know what those decks that were in flux, whether they'll go to this idea of a library or whether they'll be treated in some different way. But I believe that we covered the last set of decks that were officially added to the database.
Ah, gotcha.
I've never really looked at the win rate data for a lot of these decks. I know the data existed, and I was really interested when they started keeping track of the average turns in a cPDH game and how that's been going down pretty consistently since this data started being tracked. And archetype representation. But seeing the individual decks, it's not surprising that of the top, I think Clay listed the top 8, or I guess it's only 8 that have made it over that 25%. 5 of them are either partner or background. We got Gut, True Soul, Zealot, and Inspiring Leader. I think that's a relatively new one to the scene. Malcolm's been around forever. Kedis and Dargo are the OGs. Everything else on here is pretty consistent, but I think Gut really been sailing through the meta.
Yeah, that thing is absolutely crushing something that wasn't really even on my radar.
Not even a little bit. I think if we go to the old cPDH, it's the final one in the database. Get them, lead them. Gut them, lead them. That makes more sense. by Gatorbait, one of our prolific brewers.
I was gonna say that's a name we know.
But yeah, I don't remember even caring about Gut when it was for those at home. Gut is a 3-mana 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature or an artifact. If you do, create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace that's tapped and attacking. And then the Inspiring Leader gives creature tokens you control +2/+2. So essentially, you sack something and you end up with a 6/3 with menace every attack, which, yeah, that'll do a ding to a life total.
Yeah,
and we've got a bunch of ETBs, etc., etc.
Aggressively aggressive. A lot of things that when sacrificed give you another token, so you just can keep sacrificing all sorts of things like Chromatic Stars and Ichor Wellsprings that when they're put into the graveyard draw you a card and keep giving you
14 pieces advantage. Of protection. I gotta say, this is Boros' time to shine, and I'm excited for it unless it becomes too warping. Something that's actually interesting, and this is just sheer speculation, but of course Clay is a member of the PDH RC. I wonder if this is the kind of thing that can influence ban discussions. Like, we see something similar with how Flesh and Blood worked when we did that kind of crossover, where if a deck wins enough tournaments, the hero, kind of your commander, gets Living Legend, I think is the verbiage, but essentially it's retired because it wins too much. So that would be interesting to see if this will end up impacting the larger format as a whole. The cPDH might still be a little niche to be that big of a problem, but now that we have the data, you can be like, listen, this card is clearly a problem or is in a decks that win 90% of the time, et cetera, et cetera. It opens up a lot of interesting data-driven analyses.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, obviously, we have talked about ban lists sort of stuff over the course of the Hex Drinkers, but we've never really talked about it in this capacity. We have very few cards that are banned in PDH and cPDH, but it is interesting to think, like, now that we are enough people looking at the format and testing the format and kind of really breaking the form. Nothing's been broken yet, I would say, but it would be interesting to kind of see how this is going to get addressed. If people think that there's things that need to be addressed, if we're going to do strictly from a data-driven, and then, like, how often are we going to be cutting things out of the meta? I would say probably not that much, but it could be interesting. And I always have been a fan of, we've seen this in other card games more than Magic, but sometimes it can be fun to kind of cut things off at the kneecap just to freshen things up a little bit.
See what happens, Pull out some trees in a forest and see, like, what grows in the undergrowth.
So that'll be something that I'm definitely looking for, because as far as I know, I haven't seen any discussion about it in the community as a whole.
I'm also very interested in these the up-and-coming decks, right? Like, you need 15 games to be considered for the compendium, so all the decks that are under 15 wins but close to or above that win percentage seem pretty spooky.
It'll be interesting to see how quickly also these things accumulate, numbers. Obviously, we have a bunch of data here, but I don't know over what course of time this is collected.
Right, and is it forever or do we reset?
Yeah. Are you one-tricking a deck, because I know a lot of people who are super prolific, they will play, if they play twice a week, they'll play 4 different decks, over the course of 4 different games or whatever. Or some people are just going for one. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out, and I have a feeling that maybe you and I will be adding to some of these numbers.
I think that's the best thing about some of this is you can quote unquote game the system by playing a deck more, but it's almost a risk, right? Like, you take a deck that has a high win percentage, you could technically, and I'm not saying anyone should do this. This is the negative side. You can take it and play poorly and remove it from the list, depending how this data is collected. But I was thinking more of, like, it's a gamble when you pick up your favorite commander. Do you think you have a chance of victory? And does you playing this deck, alter its standings? Since these are kind of, community-driven decks. And the other one is, if you have a very solid deck and you want to see it in there, the only way to kind of get it onto the database is to continue to grind the deck and play it as many ways as possible, which is so much better as a concept than can you make your primer pretty and can you have your cards tagged and can you have them in an individual way. Instead, you're, like, playing Magic to get the results you want. And that is just going to be so much more fun and interesting, especially for the content creators that are staying in this space to keep producing that content and keep putting up those wins.
It's almost like we have a ladder now, kind of like, you know, on Arena, people like grind to mythic rating and stuff. It's almost like we have that now, which is kind of interesting. I feel like this is something I should know exactly off the top of my head, but I almost feel like we should have like a league similar to the one that I participated in for PDC. I feel like we should have like a cPDH league.
Ooh, that'd be cool. We'd do that. Maybe do a little write-up at the end. We still have the Hex Drinkers website.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. That's something I'd love to participate in, and I definitely would help kind of organize and stuff.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Yeah, I could bring you know, Duskmantle hasn't seen a lot of love since its original inception. I've seen it in a few streams, and that was super satisfying to me personally, but I'd love to take an updated version of that and run the gauntlet and see how it can end up.
I need to where's
Sailor's Bane?
Sailor's Bane is on. Where is it?
It's been getting some good numbers. If Papa
Wait a
Popper's
minute. Where's
Twitter stats are to be.
It's not on here. What the heck? I don't see it.
Has it not been in like recorded games?
Maybe I believe this is alphabetical. I'm not seeing Sailor's Bane on here. Papa Popper, what are you doing? What are you doing?
We gotta get it.
I thought this was going to be a group effort here, and now I don't even see it on here.
Thunder.
Oh wait, no, it's all the way. It's all the way at the bottom.
Oh yeah, Sailor's Bane is at the very bottom. 5 games, 67% win.
Oh no, it's 3 games, 2 wins.
Oh yeah, 3 games, 2 wins.
All right, so we've got a bit of a ways to go. We've got a bit of a ways to go, but
my boy Hamza out here, 1 game, 1 win, retiring. That's the way to do it.
It is funny to see all the ones that are one game, 1 win, 100%. Especially a lot of these old ones, like you see like Warden of the Eye. That was like one of the first ones we talked about.
Something I really like here, probably one of my last points before we should move on. Thrall Parasite coming in with a 67%, 2 wins out of 3 games. Thrall Parasite came up, I think it was Brad from the PDH pod who just randomly threw it up on Twitter one day. Thrall Parasite is a 1/1 for 1 with Extort, tap, pay 2 life, remove a counter from target non-land permanent. Essentially, it's a mono black Witherbloom where you can just extort every spell you play. You're not really that worried about the paying life and removing a counter. You're just doing all this life loss of all of your opponents and slinging, you know, mono black removal and stuff. And that's really recent. So kind of seeing how that inception and then how it's already putting up numbers, I'm very excited to see how that one goes.
Now that I'm giving this a longer look, at least in the stats section, there are a ton of lists here that are not accounted for in the compendium / library that they don't have links to deck lists and primers and stuff. There's a ton of things in here that are not on that.
So that's just people playing. And now they have a chance to kind of get out there because it's all database, and we don't need them to go through CPD or go through budget brews and pause it and request the committee to check. It's just the people playing Magic, and you're taking it down to that kind of like the lowest level.
But the great thing is that I think if you see something on here that you'd be interested in, if you're like, oh, I always wanted Jasmine Boreal of the name cut off. I don't know what the full name is, but you know, if you want that one, the community's small enough where I think you can probably reach out and someone will know where that list is, and you can get that list or tinker on that list.
And some streams are very good about putting the deck list in the notes. Or I know Possibility Storm will show you the deck list in the beginning, or at least they have for a few videos, kind of like a Mogo or Moto kind of like breakdown of all the cards that are in there.
I am super optimistic and super excited for this new evolution in terms of tracking the community in the metagame. So very hyped for this to grow and continue to see success.
Someone needs to take Passageway Seer to game 15. 14 games played, 57% win rate. Who's going to be the one who pops it up on the compendium? Wait, you could just lose a game and it would still have a high enough percentage?
You only need over 25. I was thinking 50 for whatever reason. You only need over 25% win rate. Yeah.
Play Passageway Seer and lose, and it's going to get you there.
Yeah, just
similar. Well, Rilsa Rael, I think you need to win that one, but that one's also sitting at 14.
Yeah, that's at 29 right now. Scholar of the Ages is at 17 games, was at 24%, so that needs to go up. Sidraxis Spectre is at 12 games, and it's at a clean 25% win rate. Once again, you could spend hours just looking at this and kind of not only looking at all the lists that are present here, but also running the math and like you said, trying to game the system. maybe we shouldn't advocate gaming the system too much.
Yeah, I know
Or
the
at least
system's
not
new
refer
and
to
we're
it as
already
such.
trying to break it. Well, we're on our way out. We can do what we want.
That's true. Y'all can't mess with the system, but us. Now we're gonna come in and mess everything up. Sorry, Clay. Sorry about that.
Don't hurt us.
Yeah. We'll go in and he'll be like, nah, sorry, you can't play in our pods.
Yeah, you've been banned.
First ever player bans. Not card bans, just player bans.
We'll make a third tier list. I think that's enough DDB information. Go to cPDH.guide for your one-stop shop for competitiveness and fun data analytics. There's also a new Discord. The idea being, the tryhards have a very specific culture in their Discord. cPDH.guide is trying to be more open and just a throwing around ideas of everyone who plays cPDH, not just the tryhards community, more than just budget brews. It's not supposed to be like a looking for game server. It's supposed to be really just like the back end for cPDH.guide. So kind of like the hub, the United Nations of various groups that play cPDH. So go check that out if you haven't already.
I'll link all these things in the show notes and
Link
stuff.
Boy will do link things. That was our main topic. Do we want to pat ourselves on the back any longer for, what the House of Commons was, what we're saying goodbye to before we get to our final segment, or do we want to jump right there?
I think we should just, similar to how we did with the Hex Drinkers, I think we should just wrap it up. We have been interested in PDH and cPDH for a while, and as the community was starting to grow, we thought that we had something to say. There wasn't that much content out, and we wanted to be another resource for people who were attempting to get into that format and who wanted to learn about that format. I will say, in the time since we've started this, that even that sphere has grown exponentially, which we're super happy to see.
Yeah.
Because now that we're leaving it, someone has to carry the torch as well. But yeah, obviously there's a ton of super knowledgeable and super passionate people in the community. We are super thankful to have been involved with all of them, and obviously we will be around in the future playing games and participating in streams and etc.
Yeah.
We will be boosting the numbers, as we said. So
it's really been like riding the wave. We did our first, I think it was episode 33, was playing hard with bad cards, which is when we really tried cPDH for the first time, back when the database was a Word doc that Clay kept together. And since then, seeing the greater PDH ecosystem as a whole, we have the PDH pod now. We have the tryhards and Ryan, the common connoisseur, streaming and every week. And then we've got Possibility Storm jumping in. We've got a few shout outs on larger publications. And then we did our part with providing a podcast for this. We had articles all over the site. It's been incredible to see the growth of the format organically and just out of sheer love. So we know we're leaving the format in a good place from a content perspective. And like Julian said, we're still around and we'll probably come to harass you on stream in the best possible way.
Precisely. All right, Chev. One little last thing to wrap it up.
Let's do it.
I don't actually know what the thing is. You just told me we have another thing.
Right. So, I mean, here we are talking about Magic and having played cPDH for something on like 2 years now, because we're ancient in this meta.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. So I was wondering, Julian, what were some of your standout decks, or what were your most standout memories of cPDH that have kind of been around, or you played, or you've seen in this time we were producing content?
I mean, obviously, I'm a sucker for Cryptic Serpent, aka Sailor's Bane. That was kind of my baby, my introduction into the format. But sometimes you just can't teach an old dog new tricks. I have to say, some of my favorite lists in the format are the Gretchen Titchwell list, the probably the deck that I've played more than anything, at least until I start really jamming some of these new lists on the DDB. Dargo, but I was gonna say Ley and Lore Weavers.
Yeah,
is the original.
Ish. It's funny to be original meta of cPDH.
Yeah, that is for sure true. I am a sucker for Dargo. When I was playing Dargo, we were still. I sound like so freaking old. Like this was like a year ago.
I know, but back in the day.
Yeah, literally, this was like a year ago. When I was playing Dargo, I was still doing the Malcolm and Dargo version. I think that more balls to the wall versions have come out. We've seen Dargo and Kedis. We've seen Dargo and Keskit, who I always mix those two up. But finally, I got it. Just more all-in combo-y versions, I think, have shown to be the premier way to play that deck. But yeah, I am a sucker for Dargo in any iteration. I have played and I have seen on stream and on YouTube video many a crazy moment with the Dargo. So definitely biased to that as well.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff?
Well, Azra Oddsmaker is always going to be the number one deck that I did not create. Just the sheer card advantage, that doing something really interesting in black and red and you end up with like a Madness style deck, or at least that's the way I like to play it. I know there's a different version of Azra that is more just like raw card advantage and not worrying about it, but I do like that little bit of Madness synergy.
I mean, I knew Azra was a powerful deck, and I've said that I've liked it as well, but it's the fourth highest winning deck. It's got a 32% win rate. Well, at least according to the cPDH guide. That was actually surprising to me, but...
Yeah, I hadn't seen it shown up anywhere in a while, but I guess that's the thing when, you statistics are great, but you need to surface them for them to actually be useful. Like, it could have been doing great for so long, and our previous view of just the DDB of a list of all these decks with no real ranking system, you can't tell which decks are really kicking ass. And so Azra's out there. I want to bring Duskmantle Guildmage and the Petitioners back to their former glory. When we've done cPDH as a play group, the Guildmage has won, and I'm still riding that victory like I've been for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
the whole get 4 petitioners on the board and just start milling is absolutely incredible. So those are probably my two favorite. And then, honestly, I really liked when we went on the PDH pod stream, or I guess Brad's stream, and we were playing, I think it was Tor Wauke, and I was running the Ortsov 40k commander that I think gets indestructible when it attacks. That was one of my favorite games as well. So
yeah, all the streams that we've been on, I mean, they've all been Brad streams, but the few times we've been on there has always been a great time.
Yeah.
Well, similar to the Hex Drinkers, this is it for a bit, but we'll be around. We still love PDH. We're still going to be engaged in the community. Now that we have all this free time, we can, do guest slots and guest streams and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna pimp myself out. Listen, I can have my secretary get in touch with y'all's secretaries. All right, Jeff.
This is it. Goodbye.
That's it. It's over. See ya. Bye.
And thanks for all the fish.